Wondering what the F has happened to your body and your life? You're in the right place, my friend. Welcome to Season 3 of Transforming 45, where we dive into the incredible stories of how brilliant humans are navigating the midlife squeeze with courage, passion, and a healthy dose of humor. Don't miss out on any of our heart-led episodes. Hit the subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and if you're inspired, share an episode you love with a friend. It means more to me than I can express that you're choosing to spend time here and sharing our message of midlife revolution. So let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. This week, I am thrilled to welcome Jessica Menke. She is an expert at helping her clients align what they do in their career with who they want to be. As a career coach, executive coach, speaker, and author of Finding Passion, Jessica has over 25 years of experience working with global organizations such as Deloitte, Canada, and as the founder of Mindspaces Coaching, Jessica specializes in helping overthinkers, introverts, and perfectionists break free from limiting beliefs, holding them back from their best self. Jessica's clients have unlocked the key to making career change, building self-trust, and having lasting confidence. Jessica, we have so much to talk about. I am so glad you're here today, and welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm so excited to be here.
I was laughing a little bit when I was reading the bio about helping overthinkers. I was like, oh, well, isn't that just like all of Gen X? Isn't that all of us? Isn't that what we do?
Maybe, but there's a lot of overthinkers out there.
Yes, that is very true. And let's start at the very beginning. So, who are you and how did life introduce you to this version?
Awesome. I love that question. Well, who I am in the full spirit of what that means, I am light. I am energy. I am happiness. I am joy. I am all of these things that I think sometimes as humans, we have a hard time describing what that is, or we have a hard time finding what that is. I am passion. I am love. I am all of those things. And so my journey to get here is that I've been, I would say, as an overthinker, I've been a pretty rule-oriented person most of my life. And those rules sometimes have really worked for me and kept me to a high standard. And sometimes those rules have been for the sake of rules. They've been almost like comfort to make something complex and add a bunch of rules and structure and organization to it when maybe that's not always necessary. And it's probably taking me my adult life to unlearn some of the rules and expectations that I started out with when I was younger, to where I am today, where I feel that, my best version of myself is the one who I really allow to kind of come out of that box and really express myself and be my biggest self and not be afraid of the things that make me really happy. And so, so my journey to get here, just the short version, I guess, is having had a successful career, been very blessed with having a diverse career that spanned, software and program management and account management. I've done every single role except for finance, to be honest. I worked in every department but finance, HR, performance management. I did that at Amazon. In consulting, I worked in Deloitte, Canada for over 8 years, actually, in Ottawa. And so I've had this just amazingly awesome career prior to becoming a coach. And I guess the rule that I was following at the time was I needed to keep progressing in order to be successful. And so I was chasing a title. I was chasing those promotions. I was chasing that money. And I made great money back then. It was really good. I mean, the performance bonuses were, they were very good, but I was kind of chasing it for the wrong reasons. And it all came undone when I started to burn out of that career when I became a mother. So my son, who's about to turn 16 in another month, this was 16 years ago that I started to burn out. And even before the burnout, because we worked long hours, right? Like there's not a lot of females. I worked in technology. We did a lot of business transformation projects. So helping companies, people, process, and technology kind of overhaul all of that. And there weren't a lot of role models at the time. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like how is this going to work when I'm a mom and I have a little one and I'm still trying to work, a 60 to 100-hour week. It doesn't work. And so I started to burn out of that career. But as I was burning out, I was asking myself the different questions. I felt that there was this, again, going back to kind of light energy, I felt that there was this capacity inside me that wasn't being harnessed. For all the wonderful things I'm still grateful that I learned at that company at the time. Gosh, I think I'm supposed to do something more than give presentations, make deliverables, produce 100-page PowerPoints. Like I just felt this huge like inertia of like, there's so much more I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be helping people in a different way. And so I was exploring that while I was, burning out and being a mom and returning to work and all of that stuff. So one day I actually talked to I had an honest conversation with my leader. And I said, I really do think that we need to be doing this other type of work. And the work I was proposing was essentially like coaching. And he's like, we don't do that here. Well, you know that we don't do that. And so it was just like the writing was on the wall that this question and answer I was trying to get to, which is like, what is so much more? What would that even look like for me? I asked it in a funny way to my managing partner. He's like, no, I just got totally shut down. And it was my sign. It was like, oh my gosh, like what I want is not here. I need to find it someplace else. So then I hired a coach, an external coach. She was in Vancouver and I worked with her remotely. And before you know it, we started making some life decisions about whether we were staying in Ottawa or not. We ended up, my husband and I, we did relocate to Vancouver and we had our daughter there. So I've got 2 children. Just amazing, just amazing. But it was that leap of faith knowing that I'm going to be okay because everything in my body, every cell in my body is telling me that this feels right and I need to trust that. And if I'd stayed, I would be kind of an imposter to myself, knowing that I had this capacity thing, this feeling, if that makes sense, of like, I can make so much more impact and it's not going to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing your story. There are many things that I want to pick up. The first thing I want to say is the way you answered the question of who am I was really beautiful. And it's not the way most people answer. And this is not judgment on anyone. All my guests are brilliant and amazing. And we often answer with our roles and not who we actually are, right? So often the answer to the question is, well, I'm a business owner, I'm a mother, I'm a partner, I'm a fill in the blank. And I often think while I'm listening to the answer, yes, but who are you? And at the same time, the paradox of that is when I think about the answer myself, the first thing that comes to mind always is I am light. And I don't know how to say that without feeling like it's such a trite answer. And there's so many layers to that because we know that it is not. It's actually the deepest truth when we let ourselves say that. But we have so much conditioning around what we should say, how we should identify ourselves, and that connecting to anything that I'm going to, for lack of a better term, because I just don't know what the words are right now, but like anything woo woo, we should not be doing because we won't be taken seriously. How did you get to be comfortable with like coming out of the gate saying, I am light? Because I admire it so much.
Well, first of all, I love that we have that in common because I could totally see that in you. And, I think I'm comfortable saying it because it's my truth and that's me living my values. So again, like through that exploration phase, if you call it that, of burnout. And I mean, this burnout was chronic. It was like, I was burning out probably before I went on mat leave. I had that beautiful year off. I accrued vacation. I took another month. So I was 13 months off. And then I came back to work and everything just looked upside down to me. Nothing made sense. I questioned everything. Everything felt different. And my peers were like, oh, you're back? I didn't even know you were gone. Were you on a project? Where were you? Where were you? Were you traveling? And I'm like, guys, like I literally just like changed my whole like life. So I think what gets me comfortable in saying I am light is that, yeah, it is my deepest truth. I think I've spent too much, and a lot of us do spend too much of my adult life and career trying to fit what other people want me to be. And I realize after leaving consulting and starting as a coach, I realized it then. I definitely realized it later when I worked at Amazon in performance management. I am so much bigger than what I do for a living. And that to me is like what this is all about. is just really giving yourself permission to be who you really are.
Yeah, absolutely. And, going back to the earlier conversation about overthinking, that is the definition of it, right? Like there's one word that is very simple and is very clear and very true. And yet, because of all of the layers of story that I carry, it's very challenging to say the thing that is true and simple because I feel like I have to, and same thing, meet everyone's expectations. In any conversation, I'm always trying to think through the perspective of, 20 different perspectives, some that I legitimately can't even possibly think through because I don't have that lived reality at all. And yet I'm trying to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and safe and supported. Part of that comes from being an educator, where that was literally my job, was to make sure that every young human in that space, and then later on I was a coach and provided professional development for other educators for the last decade of my career.
Mhm.
So doing that for educators. So I know I can trace back all the reasons for why that is. And it also is a double-edged sword in that I create spaces where people feel comfortable. And a lot of the time, it is at my own expense, where I don't always show up as my full self, or I don't always tell my full truth because I am constantly thinking about, but what will someone else's response or reaction to that be? And I'm wondering if you see that in a lot of the clients the humans that you work with.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting, it's kind of a full circle moment as we're talking about this,
Yeah.
because I think that's exactly why I reached out to a coach in the first place, is because I was really nervous about, like, if I leave this career, what's that going to look like? Everybody in my support network was saying, you'd be crazy to leave. It's such a good job. It's such a global brand. I mean, come on, like, there's so many reasons to stay. And I did like the team I was on. I love that team, actually. Never had a better team than the team I had at this one particular project that we worked on for several years. But, all that being said is, like, it's just so important to ask yourself the difficult questions. And I didn't know how to do that on my own. So not only was I letting go of an identity that was this corporate identity, working for a global brand, well recognized brand. Some people can't pronounce Deloitte, but it's Deloitte, and a wonderful company. But I was leaving that identity to go pursue what is the next part of my identity that I'm stepping into now. And I didn't have a map for how to do that. I didn't understand how to do that. And so the first place that I started was, looking at my personal values. And I was really good at living the company values. I was really good at being that corporate citizen who's like, let's do that quality initiative. Woohoo, I'll lead it. I was really good at that. I was really good, too good, maybe. And so it was like time to do that for myself. And I think as you learn to do that for yourself, it's a little bit of hibernation, right? Like, it's a little bit of, like, turtling and going in yourself and reconnecting with yourself and who you really are. And unfortunately, comparing yourself to others, it never gets you there. It never does. So I think I have a lot of thoughts on comparison, but
Yes.
it just wasn't working. I think I had already tried that for so long and I was ready to do something different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted also to circle back to the conversation about motherhood and the impact that that has. And when you and I had our initial conversation about this episode, I said, we can talk about it from both ends of the spectrum, where you were in coming back to work after a maternity leave, and I am at the other end in launching humans. And when I was listening to you talk, it was like a bunch of dots sort of fell into line, because my boys are 22 months apart. So when I came back from my second maternity leave, I had a 2-year-old, and no, I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And everything that my body had been through in that very short period of time, like 2 pregnancies, I had 2 C-sections, I had high blood pressure, and I was an educator and I was teaching young humans at that point. So when I left on my first maternity leave, I'd been a special education resource teacher. So lots of high demand, lots of community work, community advocacy, all of those things. And then when I came back from my second, I was teaching grade 1. And during that pregnancy, I also had been teaching grade 1. So imagine my like very pregnant body on tiny little chairs. So there was all of that physicalness that I was holding in my body. And when my youngest was 6 months old, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. She died a month before his first birthday, and I was back to work within 6 weeks of that. And it is only now when you were talking about that, and I realized the roots of my workplace burnout were there. And yet I pushed through that. Again, going back to your, in search of what is success, what is enough, right? I continued as a classroom teacher for a while. Then I moved to the board of education. So I was doing central work, and then I was chasing provincial roles and doing provincial work. All the while that pyramid was teetering on all of this burnout and trauma that was the earthquake waiting to happen underneath. And then eventually, because we know the body keeps the score, that earthquake, like those tectonic plates only stay static for so long before eventually they're going to crash into each other, which is what happened for me. And so that story that you told was really helpful in letting me put those pieces together and sort of bringing that story together, because I'd always sort of seen it as different sections. And now I'm realizing that it just was one thing building on top of another. And I know that so many of us in this phase of life, that's the norm. It's not the exception, right? We are all in this space, and at midlife really starting to wonder what is enough.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm just reminded of like, yeah, this the scaffolding that we're developing all along when we're told to high perform, when we're working through, being maybe the only female in the room or being the only female leader. We're building a lot of these tools or trying to find the right tools to meet those moments. And sometimes maybe we don't grab the right tool. So yeah, I love your question. What is enough? I'm going to spend the rest of my life figuring that out. And I'm a lifelong learner. So for me, like when I start to get comfortable, that's when I know I need to grow. And I think I naturally have like a spidey sense like that. Like, I don't know about you, but even back when I worked in corporate, every 3 years or so, I would get twitchy. I'd be like, I need to do a new project, or I need to take on a new initiative, or I need to learn this new skill. Like our body's kind of telling us like, hey, it is time to do something new, because that newness is exciting and we get joy out of doing something new. I always say like, you have your comfort zone, but right on that edge of the comfort zone is your learning edge. And beyond that is your stretch. So like, what can you do that just keeps expanding your comfort zone in your life? And I literally picture a circle, and I picture like my job is to keep like moving those walls out just a little by little. And it's not scary if you do a little step at a time. So when is it enough? I don't know. I'm just going to keep going, keep growing.
Yeah. And I think the what is enough question has a couple of different facets, right? Because I agree with you. I had Dr. Peggy Malone was on my show last year, and she talked about how novelty expands time. Also, when we're doing new things, that's when, we're in flow more. It expands the time, and the mundane, like the constant, it shrinks it. And that was really interesting to me. And so when I hear you talk about that, it makes me see all of your curiosity, right? That when we're really curious and we want to know more about different things, that's a great way of staying vital and interested and engaged in this life experiment that we're living. And so in that stage, I hope that nothing is ever enough, because I want to remain curious forever. And the other side of what is enough, I think, from the perspective that I'm looking through it at, is what is enough of performing for other people, of continuously going down a road. When you talked about rules, I was like, yeah, I have the beginnings of a book rolling around in my head. I've got a few sort of notes on paper, And I'm calling it the midlife revolution of a former rule follower. So I was, in sync with you on that. And absolutely, sometimes they've been really helpful and helping me create a life structure that is doable, that's possible, and that feels good for me. Sometimes I use them as a crutch to keep me safe.
Mm.
Well, I don't want to say as a crutch because that's not true. Like if I was in a space where I needed to feel safe, there was a reason for that. So I used those rules as a way to keep me safe and small sometimes.
Right.
Right. And it's that when do we hit the point of enough? Like you hit your point, I hit my point, and almost every person I have had a conversation with on this show has reached that point of it is enough of me being small and using rules as barriers and now it's time for me. And I think that is what is so exciting about this phase of life.
Yeah, I love how you said that. It's just so good. It's so true. And I think, as we experience these moments of flow and moments of life being hard, it's never a steady state. And thank goodness it's not. I'd be so bored if I predictably knew what life would look like. So I feel like, what the way I approach my life now, and I'm turning 50 this year, which I'm super excited about. The way I'm approaching life is just to be more buoyant, is just to, be complete in what I'm doing, be content with where I am, and start to really look at some of these still expectations or rules that I have for myself. They don't anymore. And if I can do that, then I can handle the ebbs and flows of life a lot easier because I'm more flexible, I'm more open and curious. And I think you're right. Like if we stay in the same place too long, it becomes stagnant air, stagnant waters. And we actually become demotivated. We lose all of our like passion and luster for life. I mean, we just start to just stagnate. And so I guess I'm always going to be kind of pushing my own envelope in this gentle way, keep growing. I recently started, after many years, 10 years, I recently started running again. And my perfectionism had stopped me from running the first time because I was in Vancouver. It's English Bay. Lululemon headquarters is right there. So everybody running next to you looks like the catalogs, and it's just like it was so much. And my younger self couldn't handle that pressure. Again, comparing myself to others. I was comparing myself to people who probably were lifelong runners, and I was really judging myself. And so, now the new version of me is like, I just want to make progress over perfection. I want to be instead of do. And so I'm being a runner. I went running this morning and it was great.
Yeah, that's great. Yes, there was a time in my life where I was a runner also. My massage therapist eventually said to me, "Lisa, your body would thank you if you stopped running." So for me, it was like my knees and ankles were like, "Mm." But that feeling of being out independently in the air, using your lungs and the endorphin rush that comes from that is such a beautiful way of caring for yourself. And I was wondering about how the decision you made. So when you were making that decision around, I can't keep living the life I've been living as a mother and as this professional. How did making that decision help you stay, or did, I guess I should ask, did it? Did it help you stay more connected to yourself and get less lost in the role of mother because we're trying to do so many things all at the same time?
Yeah, I definitely stayed connected to myself. I like to think of my son, might have in some ways like picked up on the coaching that I was doing at that time or something. But we had this moment when he was 3 and it was Halloween, and he never seemed really attracted to superheroes, right? Like he was very suspicious of these characters who wear masks and what's that about and why is that on their face, kind of thing. And I remember asking him just openly, just as a mom supporting him. I'm like, well, I'm not big on Halloween, but maybe my kid will be big on it or be into it. And so I asked him, I said, well, what do you want to be for Halloween? And he's like, Mommy, I just want to be myself. And that was the moment I was like, yes, okay. like me reconnecting with myself has made me a better mother to him. And even to this day, both my children, they are independent thinkers and they make their own decisions about what other people are doing, and they support it. They don't judge it. They're like, well, they're doing that, but I want to do something different. And so just really changing the approach on that. And I think, yeah, I've still stayed connected to myself. It's because of those values, those personal values that we defined. Those have been a constant, and they are truth, interconnection, essence, and I added joy.
Oh, I love that. What does essence mean to you?
Well, essence is that cycle of overthinking that I described. So the way the first three values for me work, they make like a little agreement with myself. And the first is truth. And so every time I speak my truth with somebody else, I learn and grow, and then we become interconnected, just like we're doing on this podcast today. Okay. So, like, I'm speaking my truth, and now you and I are interconnected. We're learning things about each other we did not know we had in common. Holy crap. We're like, so have so much. And then as we process that or internalize that connection and that conversation, it brings you back to some new essence. And that's the learning. That's the aha moment for you and I both, or for our listeners, is like it brings you back to yourself. And so then that makes me brave and to share again and to try it again and to go on the next, to come on today and say, like, I'm light. It's a positive feedback loop,
Yeah.
and that's how I try my best to live every single day. And if I can live in alignment with those values, I really have no regrets, because man, that's the best that I can do, and that's what's within my control too.
Yeah. And I think that's so important for anyone who's listening, who's, I mean, in various stages, whether you're a mother or not, living authentically as yourself is the best gift you can give to the people around you. And I heard that so clearly in the answer that you were giving. And we talk about it on this show a lot because I totally believe that too. I've told this story before, but when I had initially taken a year's leave from teaching, it was early in September. So maybe it had only been a couple of weeks where I was in this leave, and my son, who was 16 at the time, came home and he looked at me and he just went, "Oh, there you are." And it was such a moment of like, it has stuck right in my heart and in my soul, because I still have the full like sensory image of where I was and what he was wearing and what I was wearing and all of those things. So those are the things that tell us that these are like divine messages coming through whoever they happen to come through. And in my 16-year-old son in this case. And it was that I was finally living as my true self, and he could see me for the first time in a long time. He didn't say how long it had been, but in him saying that, I knew he had lost me. He had lost sight of the truth of who I was because I had to. And it's so important for ourselves to be able to plant our feet firmly in who we really are and give that gift to the people around us, despite all of the messages that we're getting of change yourself, make yourself smaller, give yourself over. It's like those are the things that are constantly coming at us. So what strategies do you use to sort of defend or deflect those messages so you can stay so firmly rooted in your own feet?
This might be controversial, but I don't listen to those messages. I have a very
Of it.
strong cord in me that is, I don't want to say I don't care, but like if I whether it's media or anything, like if I have messages in my life or noise in my life and I am exposed to that noise and it makes me feel bad, that's my cue. Again, your body is keeping the score. You're metabolizing that noise, you're metabolizing that message. And if it doesn't feel good, I'm a little selfish. I just won't listen to it. I won't put myself back in that position. Or if I do, if it's something I have to be a part of, or an interaction with somebody I need to work with, obviously, then I need to find new strategies to handle that moment.
Mhm.
So it's just as simple as that, because to knowingly put yourself in positions where you're surrounded by somebody, let's say, who's toxic. I'm just going to use a really extreme example.
Yep.
Somebody who's toxic, and you're going back again and again to be a part of that sphere of energy. Wow, there's a toll. And I mean, for me, energetically, it feels like residue. It's like, wow, I need a shower. I need to flick that slime off because it's gross and I feel gross. So I just am listening to my body when I start to experience that.
And it's again, it's going back to the I am light. we tend to overcomplicate things and think that things need to be hard or we need to have this list of things that we do. And it really is as simple as this doesn't feel good. Right? Like, when we're in spaces or we're receiving messages where it doesn't feel good,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. That is our body's way of communicating with us and saying, "You deserve better than this."
Yeah, and that friction, my clients will describe it as ick. It's like I have this ick feeling around somebody. It's like, okay, well, listen to that. What's that ick trying to say? If it
Mhm.
could talk. And then usually they'll blurt out the truth, which is like, just this isn't right. But, and so trusting that that friction is giving you feedback. And we have our emotions and our feelings and our gut and our intuition. And then also our logic, as overthinkers, we definitely have a strong logic muscle, but we can use any of those to give us the feedback that says this isn't right for me. And so you have a choice point at that moment. You can decide to continue being exposed to that and using new tools, or maybe you have a choice to do something different.
Yeah, and the choice to do something different is really powerful. When we're letting ourselves sit with that, it's been presented as negative or judgmental or choose your word, guilt laden, whatever. And it's really not when you're coming at it from a place of curiosity
Mhm.
of why. Because you're not just writing that person off as a bad person because we all know that also isn't the truth. Everybody is the way they are for a reason, for life experiences that they've had. And it's not our role to be for everyone. And that's a very hard lesson that I have had to learn over the years. And when you were talking about leaving your role, I had the same experience leaving teaching. People were like, "You're leaving teaching? Are you insane?" And I lost a lot of people through that transition. And I had to make some sort of peace with that of it's okay. I am not for everyone. And I can't continue to turn myself inside out to try to be that way. And it doesn't mean that I am sitting in judgment of other people. It means I am asking the question of what is best for me? What am I learning about myself through this experience? And what do I really want to be able to move forward in a way that feels good for me? So I think that those are two really like super simple but really impactful strategies of, does this feel good? And if it doesn't, why not? And what do I need for me?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. And when you have things that give you such a discomfort, I do believe, the universe is trying to talk through those things as well. So it's kind of like, what happens when I hold this discomfort? What happens when I listen to it? What happens when I observe it in a different way? And it's because of some of those things that happen to us. We call them wake up calls, and I'm using the air quotes, like wake up calls. We have wake up calls in life, and I think it's exactly that, when things are maybe not exactly what they seem, but the lesson we need to get out of it is right in front of our faces if we would just observe it and just be looking for it and be open to looking for it. And then those can be the catalyst moments in life, like they were for me, to really make a fundamental change. I needed it to get hard and burn out in order for me to wake up. If it hadn't gotten hard, I would still be in those positions trying to make a career and a lifestyle, because that management consulting is actually more like a lifestyle career. Make that lifestyle work for me. And it did not fit. It did not fit my vision, and it did not fit me and my family's needs.
Yeah. And so is that the stance you were in when you were writing Finding Passion?
Absolutely. So finding passion in my book is my own story of, like, if I had to do it all over again, what would I have wanted to tell myself or tell others? And I'm still kind of in awe sometimes when I look at the book. Writing a book, Lisa, is a fabulous transformational experience just in and of itself, to again fully express and fully expand and all those things we've already talked about. So saying writing a book, to me, it was also a catalyst, because I am so proud of the things that I wrote in the book, and so much of it is still absolutely 100% accurate for me today. And that's what blows my mind. We always think about our future selves being so knowledgeable and so wise and so amazing. There was something that was happening, some unfolding and unlocking that was happening for me during that work and during that personal exploration. that I can look back at some of the things I wrote down then and go, oh my gosh, like that is such a gem that is still true today. So I was exactly going through that transformation and figuring out who I wanted to be. And what I realized, the book is called Finding Passion, but it's really at the intersection of finding work that you love and finding what aligns to bringing out your best. Because I had the work that I loved. I had that, but it wasn't bringing out my best. I had way much more in the tank to give.
That that is where we're at, right? At this stage. And I love that you were referring back to not just crediting the wisdom of our past selves. We just recently moved. And so, we're going through all the things. And I came across journals that I had written at when I was working at a summer camp when I was 16, 17, and 18. There's lots of things in those journals. Some of it was like, wow, I was a lot more focused on boys than I ever thought I was because I never thought that was a thing. But looking back, I am. And also in that was still this, like, even at 16 and 17, this search for self, for who am I and what do I really want? And there were, snippets from those journals of that young human that I still say today. And it's so beautiful to be able to revisit the versions of ourselves that have been the story. They are all characters in the story for how we get to where we are now. And valuing all of those stages is really important because I think sometimes we're so focused on the search for future self and best self and however it is that you conceptualize that for yourself, that we discredit everything that came before and we discredit the present.
Yeah. And you're touching a nerve here because it's like all of those past experiences, good and bad, have led you to this moment, right? Like all of those experiences are cumulative. They're building blocks. They're fundamental stories in who you are and who you want to be. And I love the idea that, we have different chapters in our lives, or we have these different phases in our lives, different eras, in our lives, whatever you want to call it, whatever word works for you. We have these different chapters in our lives. And that's okay. You're not a phony because you reinvent yourself. Nature reinvents itself. We are nature. We absolutely, as humans, have a natural propensity to reinvent ourselves again for the learning, for the growth, for the sharing our gifts or sharing our talents with others. And it's really, really powerful to think about those chapters. People ask me all the time, like, oh, Jessica, like, what if I'm on the wrong path? I'm wasting time in my career. I'm wasting time in my life. Like, I don't know which choice. I don't know which direction. What if I'm on the wrong path? And I'm like, look down at your feet. You're on the path right now. And you asking the question is probably further along than the part of you that was 2 weeks ago who was not ready to ask that question. Like, we don't always see ourselves in that way. So I wondered
Yeah.
what you thought of that.
Yeah, I love that. I think look down at your feet. I think that is a really beautiful visual to leave people with. And I'm working with a somatic experiencing therapist at the moment because I have been very numb for a long time. And that's one of the things we work on, even like look down and also be intentional and feel the bottom of your feet, because that's how we ground ourselves into this present moment, to be fully in our bodies, to be fully in this moment that we're living, to be on this part of our path. I really like that you highlighted nothing, it's not a waste, right?
Mhm.
None of it is waste. All of it is the path. And being present to where we are on that path in that moment and everything that has gotten us there is really beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing all of your beautiful wisdom with us today. How to get a hold of Jessica will be in the show notes. We'll have a link to your book as well, Finding Passion. So make sure you check that out. And Jessica, thank you so much for being here with us
Oh
today.
my gosh, Lisa, this was so amazing. It was such a wonderful conversation. And I'm so excited for you and your journey, and hopefully your listeners getting a lot of good gems out of our chat today. So thank you for having me.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode of Transforming 45. I hope you feel inspired, empowered, and ready to embrace every facet of your midlife journey. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. These actions make a world of difference in growing our podcast community. Your support helps us reach much more amazing listeners just like you. And don't forget, please share an episode you love with a friend or with your community. Sharing our stories is what helps our community grow. Keep shining your midlife magic, and I'll catch you next week. Electricast.